What's up, guys? I wanted to talk a bit about my early impressions of NASCAR Heat 4. This is not a review. I just want to talk about some of the things that I've discovered or noticed about the game that I think are important. I am planning to do a review of the game, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, sometime around that point. But to get right to it, I'm really happy with what I see so far. Obviously, the game is not perfect. There are issues, which I am going to talk about, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this early impression video because there are things I think 704 needs to address. Okay, so I will get to that. But initially, my early impressions are based on running single races on 105 and having everything more or less on normal settings. And I like having my settings the same as the AI settings. I don't want to get to the point where I'm trying to have change my setup uh, compared to the AI to make the game competitive to a certain point. I don't like that. It just something doesn't feel right about that, and that's not a solution to make up for, let's say, a lack of competitiveness. Which I'm happy to say, as up to this point right now, I've raced a bunch of races, and I'm pleased to say I have yet to race to have a race that I found unacceptably easy. Every race that I've had so far has been competitive. Now I will say that Daytona and Talladega, I would say they do lean a little bit towards the easy side. If you know, if you spent any amount of real time on these restrictor plate tracks, you can kind of figure out the draft and stuff like that, and you should be able to work your way up to the front without much issue. I don't really care that much about that because those are restrictor plate tracks. I'm not a big fan of them. I do race them, but I don't do long races on those tracks. I just restrictor plate racing is not appealing to me, so it's not that big of an issue. All the other tracks that I have raced on so far, which is not all of them, but I've done I think maybe 8 or 9. Uh, I'm not going to list all of them, but so far they've all been very competitive. Okay, so I am really happy as of now. Uh, but I say that with reservation because I've noticed every year there's always a couple of tracks along the way that are easier than others. But on the highest settings, um, it's very challenging. That has come to me as a bit of a surprise because I've noticed I've watched almost every gameplay video that has been put out there, and one of the things that did concern me is that the game did seem easy. Now, there's got to be something I'm confused about or something I'm missing. Maybe I didn't pay attention to all the settings. And a lot of these gameplay videos, they don't even show you where the settings are. So I get it. Maybe those settings aren't the highest settings. But there are videos I've seen where they put it at 105 and pretty much similar settings, and it looked way too easy. So I was really concerned. But for me, it's been very challenging. Now, it's hard to gauge your own abilities, but I think being as honest as I can be with myself, I consider myself slightly above average as a racer. It's hard to really determine that because who do you compare that to? But if I race, let's say, some of these pro league guys or these esports guys, I really believe they would mop the floor with me. I'm not on that level, I don't think. But I do think I have a good feel for the game. So I do think that I may be slightly above average, right? I'm okay at the game, but I'm not really great at it. So this competitiveness, it definitely up to this point, it fits me perfectly. My average finishes have been between 17th place and 20th. so far, right? Based on the limited races I've done, 25% races, I have taken the stages off, right? And the reason I did that is because I want to test. I'm really testing the game, so I want to test it to see how it races in longer runs. And when you have the stages, it breaks up the runs. And then on top of that, this is one of the issues that I'm also going to talk about is the cautions. The game does tend to lean on a lot of cautions, right? Uh, I think they could shave it down just a little bit and maybe have the cautions a little bit more based on the length of the races. In other words, if you're running a 25% race, maybe the cautions don't come out that as often as they do. And then if you go to 50% or more, they could throw in a few more cautions along the way. It has to be random, of course, but just gauging it right now, the cautions do come out a little too much. But the real problem is at the end of the races. There's always a late caution, and you know what? If it happens once in a blue moon, that's fine. You get late cautions in real life in NASCAR, but it seems to just happen every time, and it does really hurt the experience. They do need to look at that, and this has been a problem going back to the last couple of games. So, 704 does have to step up and take care of that. But the other issue that I found, and I really got to say, it's becoming annoying. There's no denying that the graphics are vastly improved. The issue is the most impressive graphical footage I've seen is from the early gameplay videos. And obviously that was all based on PC. So I heard that the consoles look almost as good, right? And I don't expect it to be on par with PC. I understand that there's going to be a little bit of a downgrade. That's fine. But I wasn't expecting what I'm seeing now, which, in all fairness, to me is a glitch. Or a bug. It's not, obviously not the way it was intended. The aliasing is the worst I've ever seen in any game. All over the entire screen, you have objects with horrible, pixelated. How can I put this? Just artifacts, and I guess you can call it aliasing. Jagged edges everywhere, and this hideous, rough-looking, fuzzy artifacts. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. If you look at the cars, they have jagged edges, the fencing, the walls, and then there's that fuzziness I'm talking about. If you look at the shadow underneath the cars, they look horrible. It's like this gray fuzzy, it's just obviously a bug. And the fencing the aliasing is horrible. And that's actually a big step back from last year. So I have to believe it's just, an early release bug. They're going to have to fix that. And that's the one thing I'm concerned about, because we've had aliasing and screen tearing in the past couple of games, and it was never addressed. They just kind of left it that way. You can't afford to leave it this way this time around, because the new and improved graphics are one of the big selling features of the game. It's one of the better improvements they've made. So you want to make sure people are getting what you intended them to get. And it would be a shame that after all the hard work, and they did put a lot of hard work into this game, to allow these bugs to really just take hold of the game and ruin, all that hard work. So they do need to fix it, and that should be at the top of their list. The game just doesn't look right. And it's one of those things that the longer you play it, it's gonna eat away at you. At least it does for me. I'm on a PS4 Pro, so there's no reason the game should look like that. And it's not pushing 4K. It's not pushing HDR or even 60 frames, right? Which at this point we should have these games running at 60 frames. I'm not going to push that too hard right now. But the PC version definitely looks more polished and it runs at 60 frames. And, it has me wondering, maybe I should have just got the game on PC. But that's not going to erase the fact that on consoles, the game doesn't look right. It almost looks like somebody took a cheese grater and just scrubbed everything. And it has this fuzziness, these artifacts, the aliasing, whatever you want to call it. And yes, there is also screen tearing. The screen tearing I haven't seen as bad as last year, but it's there. So 704 has to fix this stuff. And I do hope you guys write to them and let them know about these problems. We do have to let them know. And obviously they're gonna have patches for things. This needs to be at the top of their list, as well as, getting a handle on these cautions. The cautions are a little too frequent, and especially at the end of the races, they got to take care of that. So those are my main issues right now. There's other issues throughout the game, but I didn't expect this game to be released with and run perfect. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in now. The video game industry, the quality control by developers, it's almost non-existent. Way back in the old days, before online gaming became a thing and the internet, or at least the early days of the internet, they didn't really have the ability to patch games after release. So they had to test, and the quality control had to be much more stringent before they released a game, because once you release it, that's it. You got what you got. So when you bought a game, for the most part, it worked pretty well because they had to make sure. So testing, quality control is just not what it used to be. And that's an industry-wide thing, right? And being that 704 is a smaller company, I'm not surprised. So unfortunately, it's something you got to live with. Hopefully they address these issues. That's really what I'm expecting. But that being said, I have to say, just based on my limited gameplay, this is easily the best on-track NASCAR experience I've ever had. And I did predict it would be, and now that I'm playing it, it is. It's because of the physics, the sound, the immersion that it adds, the AI. They spread out, they run different lines. Is it perfect? No. But when it comes to gameplay mechanics, there's never going to be a point where you say it's perfect, you never have to touch it. That's, I've said this many times before. Every year they have to go in and tweak it. And that's what I expect to continue to happen. But what they did this year, they managed to take a huge swing at the gameplay mechanics, and it is night and day better. And on the track, racing against AI, this is the best NASCAR experience ever. And that includes the best games like, Thunder and stuff like that. I'm not going to compare it to a simulator, okay? This isn't a simulator. I consider this a simcade, right? It's got little touches of sim, but really it's a mix between arcade and sim, which is perfect. That's what you're aiming for with this series. So for what it is, they really, really did a great job. And I've never had this much fun racing. And again, there's still a lot more for me to do. And I may discover things that kind of bring it down a bit. But I'm just giving you my early impressions based on a handful of races. And I really did push myself and really try to get the most of it. And I love it. Um, for me, the difficulty so far has been perfect. In my opinion, you shouldn't be able to win all the time. In a season, if you win 5 races, right? Even that, it's a great fucking season in NASCAR, right? You're not supposed to win all the time. And I think that a lot of times with these, especially games from the past, they were a cakewalk. You can win almost every time, and it shouldn't be that way. You have to struggle. You have to go through what real drivers go through. Even guys who race for top teams, they struggle. It's not easy to fucking win. So you shouldn't be able to win every time. And so far I'm loving it. Like I said, I'm fighting mid pack. And I think another thing they kind of improved on is also the stock setups, right? Last year it just always seemed like no matter what you picked, there was something bad with it. They just weren't good setups, and you would either get killed in the corners, coming out exit, going into the wall, or maybe spinning out because the car was too loose. It would just like have this quick, sudden snap. So you never could find that perfect balance. And with these setups, they're not like gonna get you to the front. Well, at least me. I'm only speaking for myself. Again, excuse me. I don't know what it is, but I see people having a lot easier. Excuse me. Having a lot easier time with the game than I am. So I don't know what it is. These guys must be really good. But for me, it's just perfect in terms of competition. And no matter which setup I've picked, I haven't tried all of them, but it feels like you can control the car. You're not going to get speed, so that's not what I'm saying. But no matter what setup you pick, you have control of the car. You can race. You don't have to worry about pushing up all the way into the wall or snapping loose, or like if you touch the apron, you're gonna just totally lose it. You do have some control of the car. So that is due to the physics, but I do think they did improve the stock setups. Again, I'm not going to win. I could tell right now with those setups, but they're good enough to give me that feeling of a challenge. And I look forward to now trying to get those custom setups where I can compete for wins. But I never want to be at a point where I'm winning all the time or winning like 15, 20 races each season. That's ridiculous. And I do think that that kills a lot of the excitement of these games. Wins should be very rare. And I'm at a point right now where a top 10 would feel to me like a win. And that's amazing. And I love that. And I hope that as I keep playing and testing, that I find that it's like that almost everywhere. So for me, just speaking for me, for my level of talent, I guess, or whatever it is, this game is so far plenty competitive. So I'm really loving it, man. I love the way the cars spread out. I don't have to be over aggressive. Last year, everything felt like pack racing. The cars never really broke apart, and you didn't have room to run. It just felt like everything was Daytona, Talladega. And when you do that at other tracks, it's just horrible. And then with the bad physics and the ping-ponging, you never had a good race. There was always problems. Now it's more realistic. The cars start spreading out. And you don't have to make these crazy dive bombs early on restarts. If you've seen my first gameplay video, I just pace myself. If I had to compare myself to a driver, not in terms of talent, but just in driving style, maybe I consider myself somewhat like a Mark Martin. Clean, took care of his car, never was a dirty driver, and just took what the car gave him and paced himself. So that's the kind of racer I feel I am. I'm not desperate to make moves right away. And that's great because on restarts you can wait. I can just maintain pace and stay out of trouble, and then the cars start spreading out, and then I can start making moves, and that's more realistic, and I love that, and I'm enjoying that so much more instead of being forced to like make crazy moves when you're completely surrounded by cars and everybody's bunched up in a pack. And I feel validated so far. The sound of the game and the way the AI spreads out and runs different lines, it's changed everything. So I'm interested to know what you guys think so far. Those of you who are on the fence, waiting to, should I get the game, should I not? I haven't bought the past couple of games. I really do think it's safe to jump in. The water's fine. I've seen enough that I can honestly tell people buy the game. In spite of there are issues, but if the on track racing, this is the best that I've ever seen. And I'm not telling you this is the best game of all time. I'm not ready to go there, and there are things to discover. But just from my early impressions, I'm just talking about on the track, the racing against the AI. There's so many options. You can find that sweet spot that you enjoy. And if you want to race more in a pack, you can. Um, there's so much you can do to tailor the experience to you. That's a huge, another huge thing that 704 managed to do. So I haven't gotten into career mode yet. There's a lot more that I need to see before I do my review. But just my early impressions, I'm loving the actual racing. And at the end of the day, that's where these racing games have to shine. It's the gameplay, the racing. One last thing, I also spent some time in online multiplayer. I've seen a lot of gameplay videos. I can honestly tell you, I can see and hear the excitement from other people. They're loving it. They're loving the online. You can, rubbing is racing. Yeah, you can beat and bang a little bit and not worry about, you know, not being able to keep going forward. That's a huge improvement. That's all on the physics, and it's more enjoyable. People are having a better time. That's as far as I'm going to go with it. It's not for everyone, and I think that your best experience is, as always, you're going to have to race with people you know and trust. I'm My experience is always bad, and it's just these lobbies. They're all these short, quick little sprints, a couple of laps around tracks, and it's a big wreck fest, for lack of a better word. I already bought the game Wreckfest. That's a fantastic game, but I know when I play that game, I know what I'm in for. That's what that game is all about. When I play a NASCAR game, I don't want a fucking demolition derby. That's why, I'm not sure online racing is ever going to be for me. However, I have ideas to improve online racing, so I will talk about that when it's time for me to talk about what 704 needs to do for the next game. So I do have ideas for online. I do care about online, believe it or not. And I do have ideas that I think would work. And in spite of, these fucked up races online, I still see why people are enjoying it. They are having fun, and people are excited. And there's a buzz around the game, and deservedly so. So as long as 704 continues to do what they've been doing, listening to the community and trying to address their concerns, that is the key to their success. They need to remember that. They need to embrace that and keep going with it. Don't get to the point where you're like, you know what? We don't have to listen to people. Let's do our own thing. This is why you are where you are right now, 704, because you are willing to listen. You deserve a lot of credit for that. And I want that to continue. So, work on patching the issues I talked about. And that's all I got to say for now. I'm at work now, but I'm telling you, as soon as I get home, I'm going to get right back on the game. I've never had this much fun racing. 20, even if it's just 25% races, I've been having a blast, and the sound is just really immersive. It's everything I've asked for, but there are issues. So let's get the graphics polished up. The console guys need and deserve to get the best of what you made. So that's it for now. I look forward to your comments, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I can do a review, a thorough review. So I look forward to your comments later.